All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a high-stakes, real-world clash from the late 16th century that honestly feels like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood screenplay. But I promise you, it is 100% rooted in the historical record. We're going to be looking at an epic, direct confrontation between an Irish pirate and the era's most powerful monarch, Queen Elizabeth I. But before we fully unravel this incredible true story, I want you to just put yourself in our protagonist's shoes for a second. Imagine being a woman in a deeply, intensely patriarchal society. You're watching your wealth being seized, your ships are getting completely destroyed, and your own son has just been thrown in prison on charges of treason. Your absolute only way to save your family from total ruin is to demand a seat at the table with your ultimate rival, the Queen of England herself. So how exactly do you pull off something like that without, literally losing your head? Okay, Section 1, the Pirate Queen. To really understand how we get to that fateful meeting, let's first set the scene. We're looking at the rugged maritime world of 16th century Connacht, Ireland, and the extraordinary woman who literally ruled its waters. Meet Grace O'Malley. The historical sources paint this fascinating picture of a woman who completely upended every single expectation of her society. Look, in a world where female authority was incredibly rare, almost non-existent, Grace actually inherited her father's title as chieftain. She bypassed her half-brother, who would have been the traditional obvious successor. And she didn't just inherit a title on a piece of paper either. She took absolute, undeniable command. Take a look at the specific definition of her role here. She wasn't just managing her lands from the safety of some castles somewhere. As a chieftainess, Grace actively used her expert naval skills to navigate the incredibly treacherous waters off Ireland's west coast. We're talking about a woman commanding her own massive fleet of galleys. She seamlessly blended legitimate maritime commerce with, some highly profitable piracy. She was an absolute force of nature, and she undeniably controlled those waters. Moving on to Section 2, Bingham's Reign of Terror. So, Grace's unique position of power soon comes crashing into an existential threat with the arrival of the English governor, Sir Richard Bingham. Just notice the rapid, really aggressive escalation between 1590 and 1593. Bingham methodically dismantles Grace's life, basically turning it into his own localized reign of terror. It starts in 1590. He actually manages to convince Grace's own son, Murrough, to join forces against her. As you'd expect, she was furious, but Bingham, he just kept pressing. By 1591, he blockades her sea ventures and destroys her fleet. By 1592, things are so bad that Grace is desperately writing to Queen Elizabeth, seeking some sort of redress for these injustices. But before anything can even be resolved, Bingham strikes again in 1593, capturing her other son, Thibaut Nalong, and accusing him of treason. You have to understand, Bingham wasn't just trying to collect taxes here. He wanted her permanently out of the picture. He was utterly outraged by her constant defiance. He actually wrote to the court stating that he had enough evidence, since her last pardon, to, quote, justly hang her. He systematically appropriated her wealth, piece by piece, and pushed Grace to the absolute brink of poverty and desperation. Which brings us to Section 3, a desperate gamble. Now completely out of options locally, and terrified that her son was going to be executed without anything resembling a fair trial, Grace realizes she has to make an unprecedented move. Early in 1593, she drafts this incredibly daring petition directly to Queen Elizabeth I. Now in it, she pleads age and poverty, asking for reasonable maintenance and the return of her seized property. But, and this is the kicker, look at the quote we have here. In a completely brilliant twist, she audaciously pledges to invade with sword and fire all your highness's enemies. Basically, she was offering to use her seafaring skills and whatever was left of her pirate fleet to fight the queen's own enemies, all in exchange for survival. It was just an astronomically bold bid to legitimize her piracy under the English crown. But Grace, being Grace, wasn't going to just drop a letter in the mail and cross her fingers. Refusing to wait around while her son sat in a dungeon, she takes a massive gamble. Step 1, she sails directly to London herself. Step 2, while hanging around court from June to September, she faces Lord Treasurer Burleigh and expertly replies to his 18 articles of interrogatory. She had to explain how circumstances, like the murder of her husband, had practically forced her to the sea in the first place. And step 3, she prepares to personally plead her case to the Queen. All right, Section 4, Two Queens Meet. This entirely desperate journey sets the stage for what has to be one of the most incredible, high-stakes diplomatic summits of the entire era. Just picture this stark clash of worlds in the royal court for a second. On one side, you have Grace O'Malley, an Irish Catholic chieftainess who spoke Irish. On the other side, Queen Elizabeth I, the English Protestant monarch who spoke English. So how in the world do they communicate? They bridged their massive cultural and linguistic divides by negotiating entirely in their only shared language, Latin. Just imagine it. Two brilliant, immensely powerful women from completely different worlds speaking face-to-face as equals.
And the outcome of this meeting? It's honestly staggering. Astonishingly, Elizabeth actually agreed with Grace. She dismissed most of Bingham's charges, basically just noting that Grace had merely lived out of order at times, which is a pretty great way to describe piracy, right? Elizabeth ruled in her favor. She recommended the immediate release of Tibbet no Long. She ordered that monies be diverted from taxes on her son's estates to provide a pension for Grace. And most importantly, she directly commanded Bingham to protect the family, let them live in peace, and actually allow them to enjoy their livelihoods.
Let's look at Section 5, a legacy of defiance.
Now, you'd probably think that's the end of the story, right? A royal decree, happy ending. But as with any really great rivalry, Bingham proved dangerously reluctant to comply with his monarch's wishes. Realizing Grace had basically been given a pass, Bingham tries a new tactic. In 1595, he stations a detachment of English troops directly on her lands, which effectively forced her to feed them while simultaneously attempting to starve her out. So what did Grace do? You guessed it. She fearlessly sails to London again. She requested to be allowed to live secure of her life. This second trip prompted a formal commission to investigate her claims against him. Bingham, finally realizing he had totally crossed the line and terrified of the new charges against him, actually fled back to England, where he was promptly thrown in prison. Grace had outmaneuvered him completely. Over the following years, even with ongoing chaos in Ireland, Grace just kept on rebuilding her family's standing in the only way she knew how. She didn't just survive her era, she completely dominated it, cementing her legendary status right up until her death in 1603. Even today, she remains this permanent, iconic symbol of Irish identity, female empowerment, and just absolute unyielding resilience against oppressive authority. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one thought. We've just seen how a woman facing total devastation refused to accept defeat, literally sailed across the sea, and demanded a face-to-face meeting with her sovereign. So let her remarkable story challenge you. If a 16th century pirate could demand equality from a queen, how far can unyielding resilience take us today? It really makes you reconsider the sheer audacity required to demand your rightful place in a world that might feel built entirely against you. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible piece of history. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.